number 8 Oregon, 5-0, 2-0 in conference play. They're going on the road. They're going up to Seattle, Washington, going up to Husky Stadium. They will be taking on the number 7 ranked team in the nation, the Washington Huskies. And oh boy, I am excited about this one. Both teams just have absolutely brilliant offenses. Oregon, for example, their season low, 38 points. That's early in the season when they went on the road to take on Texas Tech. Washington, meanwhile, they just had their lowest score of the week, 31 against Arizona. But one thing's for sure, these two teams, they certainly know how to put points up on the scoreboard. So I'm really excited about this game in particular. I will have all eyeballs on this particular game. Cannot wait for that to go ahead and kick off for us at the 3:30 time slots. And this is a little bit different too. So these two teams have actually played against each other 114 times previously, but this 115th meeting is going to arguably be the biggest meeting in the history of this particular matchup. Not only is this going to be the last iteration of this in the Pac-12, as both teams will be going over to the Big Ten following the conclusion of this football season. My thoughts on that both these teams going to the Big Ten have been well documented to this point, so I'm not going to dive too deep into that. This is the first time, actually, that these two teams are ranked in the top 10 at the same time when they meet up at Husky Stadium. So, big game. Absolutely big game. We got passionate fan bases on both sides for those that pay a little bit more attention to football on the West Coast. And it's going to be really important. This is a must win for those that want to go and compete for a conference championship. Pac-12 standings. I'm not sure I'm going to have them up when we have the podcast out, but here's a current look at what the Pac-12 standings are going to be looking like. USC on top right now. They have a 4-0 conference record. Oregon and Washington are tied with a 2-0 record. So whoever does manage to win this game, whoever wins this game will have an inside track to make it to that Pac-12 championship. And the reason why I talk about that specifically is you could see on the screen right now, I actually did decide that we're going to go ahead and include this. You can tell there is no divisions in the Pac-12. So it's the two best teams regardless of division. And that's how it is, how it's going to go. That is how it is going to go. USC already puts themselves on the inside track with that 4-0 conference record, like I said. So winning this game is going to really help making sure that they are going to get themselves to that Pac-12 championship when it's time to do that. This Oregon team will be they'll certainly be looking for some revenge right now. Last year when these two teams got together, lots of points scored in this game. And what ended up happening last year, Oregon actually did have the lead. That was something that we did actually see happen. However, Washington was able to rally back late in the game, and they won 37-34 over what at the time was the number 6 ranked team in the nation in that Oregon Ducks team. So, Oregon going on the road, like we said, they are going to take this Washington team on. College conference implications, college football playoff implications. I feel safe to talk about that now that we are in the month of October, and just looking for some payback at the end of the day. That's really what it's going to come down to. And really, speaking of that, how is this game going to be won? Either for Oregon or either on Washington. Key here is the defenses. We know what's going to happen in these games. Oregon has a very good offense. Washington has a very good offense. Both of these teams are going to score. Both of these teams are going to put up a bunch of yards. It's going to be borderline video game numbers in this game. That's just how it's going to go. That's how the cookie is going to crumble, so to speak. That being said, though, can you, when you get these teams in the red zone, can you force these teams to get field goals instead of touchdowns? Because I look at the Red River rivalry that happened this past weekend. Part of the reason why Oklahoma was able to beat Texas was because Oklahoma was more able to get Texas to settle for field goals or turn the ball over in the red zone versus Texas getting touchdowns. Texas had to work a tad bit harder. And then, of course, they got big plays from Dillon Gabriel on that final drive to put Oklahoma over the top. So that's a big key. Big key is, can these defense get the critical stops, force field goals versus forcing touchdowns, right? That's the big one. Whoever can make more of those critical stops in this game, I think it's going to end up winning this game. So from that, I kind of lean towards this Oregon squad more so than what we saw from this Washington team. So I think the Washington defense, I do say this, Washington, I do believe, is better defensively than they were last season. I think they made some strides defensively. However, I think Oregon is a better defensive team overall than what Washington is. Because take away that Texas Tech game where they gave up 30 points on the road. Because keep in mind, Texas Tech was coming off a loss to Wyoming, and they were in wounded animal mode. This is the points that Oregon has allowed since just taking out that Texas Tech game. 7 points, 10 points to Hawaii, 6 to Colorado, and then the last game that they played, the Stanford matchup on the road, 6 points. So this is a very good defensive team. And because it's a little bit better of a defensive team overall than what Washington may be, Washington, of course, has not looked as stellar defensively in its last couple of matchups as they've started Pac-12 conference play, taking on Cal and Arizona on the road. I do give the initial advantage to the Oregon Ducks in this regard. Even though they are going to be on the road, one thing that I always think travels, regardless of whether you're a home team or a road team, I think defense always travels, and I think that could certainly be the case there. They're certainly going to need it. Another big matchup to watch out for, and I mean, I think everyone was seeing this coming from 1,000 miles away. Who's going to outdo the other? Big implications in terms of being in that hunt for the Heisman Trophy as well. You got Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback for the Washington Huskies, playing at a high level, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, basically 2,000 yards at this point. He has a higher completion percentage than last year. He's completed 75% of his passes. And yeah, he's just playing at an extraordinarily high level right now. He's just doing a great job just guiding this Washington offense. And he has honestly played himself to being that first-round pick in the NFL draft because of how stellar that he has played at this point in the season, and hasn't even done so, haven't had to rely on the legs. Remember, this Michael Penix Jr., you want to go back to his days in Indiana when he had Indiana relevant back in the COVID season. He was using his legs a little bit more, became better as a passer overall since his days in Indiana, but I think he still has a dynamic running ability. That's going to be a big thing to watch. Can Dan Lanning figure out ways to confuse Michael Penix Jr., keep him contained in the pocket, because when he rolls out of the pocket, he can make some big plays in that regard too. Bo Nix, while not as flashy stats as what we have seen from Michael Penix Jr. so far, also having an excellent season too. 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, taking real good care of the football. I'm talking about real good care of this football. He only thrown 1 interception the entire year. He did that 2 games ago against Colorado. Still blew out Colorado. I want to keep that in mind, right? So who's going to outdo the other? And which defensive coordinator is going to do a little bit better of a job of taking care of keeping the opposing quarterback contained? That's going to be a really interesting matchup. I think whoever is also going to put up more numbers from their quarterback. We see a quarterback-driven league at the NFL. College football is starting to go in that direction, if it hasn't already. I mean, we've almost always seen quarterbacks win the Heisman in the last decade plus. So that's something to also keep an eye on. And I think that's a push between both of those 2 teams, because I mean, Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr., I think they're certainly on the same level as of right now, or at least very similar. Now, good news for Michael Penix Jr., he is expected to have his full complement of offensive weapons available for him. And this is the first time that this has happened since the week 3 matchup against Michigan State. Wide receiver Jalen McMillan, very good wide receiver for the Washington Huskies. He is coming back. He had that injury against the Spartans, and he missed the last couple of games. He did miss that Colorado game. He did also miss the matchup that they had against Arizona. And it'll be a welcome addition. In the 2 full games that he played, the Boise State and Tulsa game, nearly 100 yards per game, 3 touchdowns too. Almost had 100 yards in a game against Michigan State that he didn't even fully play in because, well, he got injured in the game. He was on pace to have such a big day, and it didn't work out like that. But he's coming back, and that's even including like Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk. Some would say arguably west of the Mississippi River, best wide receiver trio in the country, at least west of the Mississippi River. If you want to count the entire country, it's absolutely top 5. But this Ducks defense could be capable of shutting it down. They have the 2nd best total defense, and they have the best pass defense in the Pac-12. Another key one to look after. The Washington passing attack versus specifically Oregon's passing defense. If Oregon can hold up in the secondary, then it's going to be Bargo Chicken for Washington. The Ducks are only allowing 150 yards per game through the air, less than 5 yards per attempt. So this is a very strong Oregon defense, even though that offense may get most of the attention. One X factor that I do want to point out, and then I'll kind of dive into who I personally think is going to win this game and how I think it's going to go down. So, sorry, I'm looking for my notes real quick. So is this a week where Bucky Irving breaks out? He's the running back for Oregon. He hasn't had to carry the ball very much. 50 carries, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. He does average 8 yards a carry. So this is a guy that has not had many opportunities to carry the football. They do like to air it out with Bo Nix and that Oregon receiving core a little bit more. But when he does carry the football, he is very effective. He does a very good job of making the most out of his touches. I think about if this is going to be a Bucky Irving breakout game, because we know this Washington team can score. So I wonder if Dan Lanning is going to want to do everything possible to maybe lean on that running game, not overly rely on the running game, so to speak. You got Bo Nix, you don't need to rely on the running game, but I think it would make sense for maybe Coach Lanning to lean on Bucky Irving, lean on that Oregon offensive line. Because last year, he had 149 yards rushing against his Washington team. Didn't lead to a win, like we said earlier, but something to keep an eye out on as well. So that they can also own that time of possession. That's another thing, too. If you keep the ball away from Washington, I think that's going to make a lot of sense, and it's going to give you a chance to win this game. So I talked about all of that. We got Oregon. We got Washington. We'll take a look at the line now. We'll take a look at what the Any Given Saturday model says. So the model as of 4 o'clock Eastern on Thursday, October 12th, the line is sitting at 2.5. That's what the line is currently sitting at right now. Any Given Saturday, that power rating model that we did earlier this week, it likes Washington a little bit more than what Vegas does. It has Washington at 7.5. And you know what I'm going to do? I think everything that I just talked about, everything that I just said, I'm going to disagree with the model here. I think aside from Washington having home field advantage, and don't get me wrong, Husky Stadium is going to have significant home field advantage. It's going to be a rocking stadium come Saturday afternoon, even though it will be a noon kickoff for those of you that are on the West Coast. A lot of things I just talked about seem to lean towards Oregon's way. And because I think Oregon is just a little bit more sound defensively, because I think their defense does match up a little bit better against Washington, who likes to throw it through the air. Ducks are number one in the Pac-12 in pass defense. I'm going to pick Oregon to win this game. And this is at detriment to my own preseason predictions. I did pick Washington to win this game. Or not to win this game, but to win the Pac-12 ultimately. But I think with how Oregon has made that step forward since the time that they were crushed by Georgia early in the 2022 season, I think that Oregon is going to come out on top, and I think we're going to have a lot of interesting games coming in the Pac-12 in the second half of the season. I'm really excited for what the Pac-12 has in store for us in its not redemption tour, farewell tour. Wow, we were having a hard time finding words. In the farewell tour for the Pac-12, I think we're going to have a really exciting conference race in this part of the country. It's a shame that it's breaking up. I will pick Oregon to win, and I will certainly, needless to say, will pick Oregon plus the points in that plus 2.5.